welcome back to the channel. Celtic win emphatically in the Champions League. Rangers back at Ibrox and Hearts sacked NAISMITH. So, there's only one place to start. We spoke about, building up to the Champions League in the new format and how we were going to go on in Europe this season. But what a performance, what a night. And I only have good things to say, but what are your thoughts on it, Paul?
Pretty much what you said there. You were there, weren't you?
Yeah, it was an incredible atmosphere, to be honest, and people can say what they want about the team we were playing, but at the end of the day, they beat the Danish champions to get there, to get through qualifying, and ultimately, what happens in rivalries, right, is if one team does really well in Europe, the other team wants to downplay it as much as they possibly can. But for Celtic to beat anyone 5-1 in the Champions League is a huge deal. It's a huge result for Celtic and for Scottish football to win like that in that stage. And the fact of the matter is, it could have been much more than 5 as well.
Yep.
So I was well impressed.
I was well impressed as well. And like you said, I think they came through like 3 qualifiers. And I don't think any team comes through 3 qualifiers to make the Champions League and are terrible. Mm-hmm. They didn't show a very good account of themselves. They look shell-shocked in the atmosphere, to be honest. And I mean, it was hard to pick anything negative about the night. The atmosphere felt like that February that we played Rangers, where we beat them 3-0 under Ange. There just seemed like a total vibe in the stadium. We played incredible, but I think it was possibly one of the best European performances I think I've ever witnessed. Particularly
because at half time, I'm sitting there with my brother thinking, is this deja vu? We've missed all these chances. We should be 2, 3, 4 up here. And it's going to be 1 each, isn't it? So, it's one of those things. Mm-hmm. I was just sitting at half time going, we're going to draw this game now, because we've missed all these. We're going to rue these chances we've missed. So to come out and just score right away in the first minute. And then also, when they score, go 3-1, you're kind of going, it might just peter out there. But to then make it 4 and 5, it shows a different kind of mentality from Celtic. But it also goes to show what happens when you go out and you back the manager in the transfer window. And I know that I don't want to harp on about this too much, but the going out and getting the players that we have, the quality that Ingle showed on the ball all night was just so apparent. It was, to me, on the ball, the standout on the pitch. And questions maybe were asked about why he was getting thrown in there. I personally thought Bernardo would start the game, and I think a lot of people did. But Ingle showed exactly why he played 11 million quid for him, and I thought his composure all night, even when you look at when they're doing the Champions League anthem and they do they go show everyone's faces, you watch it back, and he's nodding, he's like, this is where I want to be, and you can see that it's a guy that's ready for this level. And obviously Rodgers knew that, and that's why he was saying, let's go and spend the money on this guy, because he looks like he's exactly what we need in that midfield. He's so dynamic, but the composure was the thing that struck me the most for somebody that's not been with this team that long. And some of the football we played from back to front was really incredible. So, in terms of an atmosphere, one of the best ever, but also just a different feel of the fans, from a fan point of view. Like, we've had so many years where you go to these games and you want to be optimistic, but we've not got the team, and that we haven't really went for it, and we're going to try, but we'll probably valiantly fail,
Yep.
And people can say what we want about this team, but at the end of the day, we have played teams at a similar level to Celtic Park and got beat over the last few years. So, I would have taken any kind of win to go out and win that emphatically and that convincingly.
Yep.
There's not really anything that you can say other than amazing and, well done to them. And for me personally, it takes the pressure right off Dortmund. It's like the players can go out there and just enjoy that occasion, give it a good back. Anything other than not getting completely battered would be a great...
Don't get humiliated.
Yeah, like give it a competitive game, but at the end of the day, we don't expect it to win. But the way the new format is, now we're looking at if you can win the 2 more home games, you're going to be through, aren't you?
Yeah, you're going to be in the playoff round at least.
So
I know that Dortmund absolutely crumbled at the weekend in the league. I think they get beat 5-1 at the weekend, and Leipzig get beat as well after St. Pauli, who are coming up for the sort of their first division. So things are looking good, like as far as like the sort of tougher, no mentioning Villa, but I think Arne Ingels was absolutely outstanding. I thought that the midfield three dominated the game. There was a couple of times early in the game that Scales and Carter Vickers sort of stepped out and they get in with just a simple sort of ball into the channel. And I think that when we're in Europe, I was saying to my mate that I was watching it with, I was like, see, this is the difference between Scotland and Europe. Like, these centre-backs can step out and challenge for the ball almost on the edge of the final third. And even if we do lose possession, we'll maybe not get punished. And if the ball goes in over the top, we'll probably match for pace. But there's a couple of times early on that they sort of get in, but we made adjustments straight away, which was amazing to see. I thought that Alistair Johnston was absolutely outstanding. I thought he was maybe the best player in the park. Liam Scales get man of the match. He was a colossus. Other than what I just mentioned there, they stepped out quite early on and got caught with the ball over the top. But I don't know if I've ever witnessed a turnaround in a player that we're currently witnessing with Nicholas Kuhn. He was absolutely dogmuck last year. He didn't look like he had pace. He didn't look like he had a touch. Didn't look like he had an end product. And what a turnaround in a player. What a start to the season. And we're going to talk about the weekend. But I just felt we were so ruthless. We just looked absolutely up for it. It was just... We made them look like any other team that we were playing in Scotland. So I don't think we could... as a support, we could be any happier with what happened last week, especially 3 games in 7 days, and what did we score, like fucking 14 goals over, like, and conceded 3 because of the weekend. But I think the last sort of week and then extending into the last 2 to 3 months, I don't think we could have any complaints as a Celtic supporter.
that's the thing, is that, you know, football is very up and down and all that kind of stuff, but right now, if you're a Celtic fan, we're in a very unique sweet spot of going, man, everything feels in sync. Like, the fans are on board with the team, manager, and also probably more so the board than ever before, because we've went out and bought the players and bought Ingles for £11 million. So it seems like there's a connection between the club and the fans that I think it's fair to say we've been missing a bit since Ives left. Last season, everything felt a bit flat. Obviously, you enjoy winning the league and the cup and all that, but it still just felt like we kind of stumbled over the line a wee bit. This season feels back to our best, but also not just on the pitch, but we look like we're aiming higher as a club overall, and that's got to be exciting, especially when these kind of results, the board see these kind of results and go, well, this makes it worth us going out and buying these players, because look what we're doing here. You're making more money in one Champions League win than you do for winning the whole SPA. You know, SPA.
Yeah, but I don't think you can. I don't think that you can make your business plan to buy people for 250 grand and sell them for 30 million quid. It just won't work. Like, Matt O'Reilly was a total freak, you know. But Rodgers has said that what he envisions as we go into the next market, the 7 to 15 million pound market, and then we try and sell these guys for like 30 plus million. And on current evidence, Arne Ingels is going to command that type of fee. He just looks like an absolute class act. And I think it's testament to the board to say that we have not missed Matt O'Reilly. Like, how do you sell an absolute like linchpin in your team in the middle of the park for 25, possibly 30 million quid, and you don't miss him? And maybe even better, you know. Like, I think we said this in maybe the last one. It's early days, but in current, I would say that the guy, he's definitely got off to a better start than what O'Reilly did. And if he can progress, and Rodgers prides himself on improving players, if he can improve this guy, like, fucking hell. And if and after the game, what was even more pleasing for me to hear was in the post-match interviews, people were saying there's more to come. So these guys feel like there's another level. So I don't know what that looks like, because I think this is the bit. This is this is better than anything we did under Ange. I think the way that we're playing, the cohesion front back to front. We've got a better goalkeeper. I feel like Scales has improved immensely as well under Rodgers. So I feel like this back four is really good. Greg Taylor looks like a player. I just couldn't be happier with what's going on. There's almost a part of me that's like waiting for something to happen, waiting for something bad, like
the thing is football, like things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Something's going to happen, right? But at the end of the day, everything that could be done, be getting done right, is getting done right. And Rodgers, we've said all along, he can improve these players, and he has done. And on top of that, one of the things I find really impressive about what he's done is the patience that he had this summer, because many managers have came and tried and failed to get through to the Celtic board to go and do this, and he has came back to the club clearly with the mindset of, I'm going to change things on a higher level here to get the board thinking about how we can evolve and things like that. So I think that he is finally sort of, if there's one thing you realise about Rodgers, is he's a pretty good politician, right? And I feel like he's managed to figure out a way to weave his way in there and make sure that we're going up to a higher level. I could be wrong with that, but it feels like something off the pitch in terms of the approach has definitely changed.
Well,
and he deserves credit for that.
Well, look, yeah, and look what happened the last time. Like, what I mean? And with we went with the biscuit tin when we did Lennon, and it didn't work. And honestly, I don't think I have ever seen a football club get so lucky with what we did with Ange. See, without that, I don't think we would be where we are now. I think it was almost a shambles. Like Ange came in and over the course of 6 months pieced a club back together, got the fans back on board with the club, because it was an absolute shambles, and the team and the squad were a shambles. So I feel like they get really lucky with Ange, and I think that they maybe knew we're not going to get that lucky again. And I think that for what you're talking about there, for a guy like Rodgers to fix you're saying he's a good politician, but to fix his opinion within the support, he needed to do something special, and it looks like he's doing something special. There's chat getting lined up for the Tottenham job. There's chat getting this and that. I don't think he'll leave. I think that he'll recognise that even if he does go to a top four side in England, that he's built this team in his image, and it seems to be working. So I think, like you're saying, I think all of the credit really needs to land at Brendan Rodgers' feet, because he's come through doubt, anger, and then poor form to really galvanise a club in the last 6 games of the last season, and then take it to another level this season. He deserves all of the applause, I think.
Exactly. I'm fully back on board the Brendan Rodgers train. And with what you said as well about other players, I echo all that about Alistair Johnson and Kuhn, and the improvements in all these players is so evident to see. Very exciting to see what happens next. But going on to the League Cup, before we move on to Rangers, I'll say that the League Cup, we got a chance to see more of the squad depth, yes. And I think it's fair to say there was a little bit of a concern about some areas of the defence on the game against Falkirk. What I would say though, because I think people in football, especially when you're doing videos like this, tend to be a bit overreactive to try and engage people in and stuff like that. And I think it's important to note that any one of those 4, Welsh, Ralston, the left back, forgetting his name now, and
is it Villy?
Yeah, Villy and Trusty. If any one of those 4 came in a settled back 4, like came in place of Scales or one of the back 4 that we usually play, I think they would have been totally fine.
I said this exact same thing to Matt, where I was saying that a backup defender is not supposed to play in a backup back four. He's supposed to come in and replace somebody in a settled back four if we need it. So if, touch wood, if Carter Vickers or Scales get injured, then Trusty's going to need to come in and fill the gap. If Greg Taylor gets injured, again, touch wood, Villy's going to need to come in and plug a gap. But these guys have never played with each other, and you can practice and you can train as much as you want, but when the adrenaline's pumping, mistakes are going to get made. There's a lack of cohesion. There was no building for the back in that first half. I feel like Rodgers sort of acknowledged this himself, that he made a mistake by completely changing the back four. I think Ralston was all right. He was Ralston in the first half, but Stephen Welsh, I really would like us to find another backup Scottish centre half that can tick that box for the homegrown player that isn't that guy. No, I feel bad for him because it's not his fault.
He's actually a really likeable guy.
And it's not his fault. He's just not good enough. And I feel like he would do well at a St Mirren or a Dundee or a Dundee United. Like, I would love to just see him go on and thrive somewhere else and play at a level in a team that he's capable. And I think he would be really good at that level at, say, Hearts or Hibs. But I think at Celtic it's just a step too far. And unfortunately, it looks like we're keeping him to tick that Champions League homegrown box, which I feel like you're like, well, the guy's probably getting 10 grand a week to tick a, he's a statistic almost, or like he's an asset. But I would quite like to see the guy move on. Because he's clearly not good enough. Like,
he seems to be well liked though, because with Rodgers and Ange even put a lot of praise on him when he was here as well. Like, the managers we've had in the last few years tend to praise Welsh and how he trains and how hard he tries and all this.
Yeah. Do you think that might be because the club needs him? Being that political way where it's like, we need this guy, so we need to keep him kind of on side. So we're going to say good things about him. We're not going to go too much into him, but every time he plays, man, you're just like, oh man, this guy's not good enough. And I feel like he lost the ball so many times. Like, I do wonder.
You have to wonder. Like, we signed that centre half for what, 4 or 5 million. It was that Nurovchik, or is that how you mentioned his name? How bad must this guy be to not be getting? You know what I mean? Because we spent a lot of money on him. He's still in the squad. He's still getting paid. He's still with Celtic. I don't understand.
He come off the bench on Sunday.
Yeah, so I don't understand what the he must be training terribly, really.
I think he can't run the line for himself without picking up an injury. I think he's just really like
chocolate.
Yeah, because he got into the team last year. Was it Carter Vickers was injured for a period, and I think he played like 30 minutes and he had to come off. So I don't think it's an ability thing. And clearly, when he has played and he is fit, he looks all right. So that is this sort of, what's the mystery? I think it's the guy's fitness, and it's a shame because I think he'd be a great backup if we had Narovsky, Trusty backing up Scales and Carter Vickers. I think I would be more than happy with that as like a sort of 4 centre halves. But I think it's got to be fitness. Yeah. Either that or he's got a bad attitude or something, but it doesn't look like that's the case.
Well, I think moving on for Welsh, I think one of the positives for me has been it gives guys like the left back, I'm forgetting his name again, but gives him an idea of what Scottish games like, and that need to be a bit more physical, because obviously we've got a couple. I know people are saying there could be fouls and stuff like that, but I mean, you can come and go, and you need to be able to hold your ground, especially in this league and against these teams. So I think it'll be really eye-opening for him, and maybe kind of, with all due respect to the guy, maybe get him in the gym, lifting some weights and stuff like that, bulk up a bit. Because I thought he had quality on the ball. He does great. I mean, it seems to get overlooked, but he did great for the assist for Bernardo's first goal, because I think that was completely intentional for him. Great run, great header back, fantastic finish. And so I think there's positives in the sense of we got through it, while also letting players that are new identify what they need to work on, which I think is positive.
Yeah, I think you're bang on there. I think like on the ball and going forward, he looked decent, but he looked far too soft. And I hear what you're saying, like that first one, the guy sort of holds him, he could have probably made it to the ball. He would have at least got in front of it to try and get a blocker or put the guy off, and I don't think he'd have get his cleaner strike away if the Falkirk player didn't put his hands around him, but it's soft.
You don't get that in Scotland.
I
You
don't
get that in Scotland.
I think in Europe that's a foul,
Yeah.
but I just don't. I think it's too soft. And then the second one, he's far too soft down that left hand side. I thought Falkirk came, had a go, looked
Fair play to
good,
them.
looked good. Will probably do well in the championship this year, but as soon as Kuhn came off the bench, the game changed. I think Taylor and Kuhn just really changed that game. Nicholas Kuhn was outstanding when he came off, and you know, again, I was saying it earlier on, like what a turnaround in a player. And I thought that Adam Ida needed the 2 goals, and needed his Champions League goal. Again, like he does a £9 million signing that's warming the bench, so
Yeah.
that's testament to how good we're actually doing, the form.
I mean,
that
to
we're in.
come on and set up 2 and score 2 is pretty phenomenal.
His chip over the keeper was absolutely like
He's
beautiful goal.
Is a goal against Rangers and a goal in the Champions League away have been better than Jota. But I mean, and that's without taking into context how Jota became kind of a cult hero for us as well, you know. So there's obviously that element to it. But like you say, the turnaround's been amazing. In contrast to the turnaround for Kuhn, let's talk about the opposite situation, because there's been a lot of talk about Lewis Palmer. A lot of Celtic fans saying he was that bad that they feel like he might never play for us again, which I think is a bit of an overreach. But the guy is all style, no substance for me.
I agree wholeheartedly. I feel like he's somewhere in between Jota and Kuhn. You know, like I feel like sometimes Jota would have that where you're like, what are you doing? You know, like why are you doing that? Like it doesn't make sense. Jota was a great player, loved him, but there was a few times where you were like, you know, like, and I feel like Lewis Palmer's a bit like, you know, like a crap version of both of them. You know, like I don't know what's going on with him. He looked decent when we signed him in the first maybe 10 games of last season. He was one of the very few positives that we actually had. But I'm wondering, did he look, was he the best of a bad team? Was everybody so shit that we were just looking thinking, scored a Champions League goal, scored a couple of goals in the league, looked fairly decent. He's got no pace. He can't hit the byline. He's a one-trick pony, and I think that what we're seeing is people have figured him out. So they know he's going to cut in on his right foot. They know what's going to happen, and he almost looked like he lacked ideas on Sunday, that every time he got the ball he just didn't know what he was going to do, and he was hoping that something was going to come off for him, and I don't think that's ever a good look for a football player.
No. He made up, last season I felt like he made up for his lack of pace through technical ability, and then his technical ability seems to have dipped as well a little bit, just in that sense of he was the kind of guy where if you give him the ball near the box he might create a chance to score a goal, whereas now he's not doing that either. And for me, we touched a little bit on what his potential lifestyle might be like off the pitch and fitness wise and stuff like that, and he looks, compared to everyone else, pretty much well off the pace in terms of fitness and just his general sort of, I mean, the best way you can put it is looking at the difference between how he started last season and how Kuhn started last season to now. There's somebody that's obviously worked. Kuhn's obviously worked a lot to be ready to go. I'm not seeing the same work, but the thing is, I think there is ability in Palmer, and there can be a player in there. But the problem is, I don't see how any of his attributes suit this team, because we're all about intensity, we're all about pace, we're all about that direct power, especially down the wings, and he just doesn't have any of that.
He slows the game down so much, but it's almost like that, and it's a different team. It's almost like reminiscent of sort of McGeady, where he takes the ball and he moves it onto the outside his right foot, and then he wants like 5-6 seconds to sort of like figure out either what am I going to do here. And I think in this team, you're just not going to get that. It's like you're saying, it's about speed, power, and intensity. And is he going to put Dyson Maeda out? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I actually felt like he was really missed on Sunday, and when he was injured last season, we really missed him. So it reiterates how important a lot of these guys are. I was a bit miffed at Hatate's performance. He almost, I don't really want to sort of say this, but he almost looked like he felt like all he had to do was turn up and not really bother his arse. The way he was just sort of flicking the ball about, it's like, mate, we really do need to win this game. Like, come on. You know, we're not 4-0 up.
Yeah, there was a lack of... And I thought well, one thing I will say, this might be a terrible shout, but he kind of reminds me a wee bit of Scott Sinclair in his last season, where it felt like every time he was getting the ball, he was just doing this like same thing over and over again, like getting 1-on-1 and then passing it back, 1-on-1, passing it back, passing it back. And that's a wee bit what Palmer was doing, but like you say, it just doesn't fit into what the team is. And I've been wondering a wee bit why Palmer's been so out of the cold this season. I think we've seen exactly why in that game.
Yeah, I think he might be away in January.
Yeah, and touching on Hatate as well, that's exactly that whole description of what you just of how Hatate's performance, depending on what game it is, can be a bit iffy. And I think that Rodgers really doesn't like that kind of thing. Like, he really doesn't like players that are like that. I think he rates Hatate obviously because of his quality, but it wouldn't shock me too much if Hatate was away in the summer next year, in the sense of not because of maybe over interest, but more because I don't necessarily know if Rodgers loves him as much as we do. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Because when he wants to perform, he can. But the thing is, I think the mentality of this club and the mentality of Rodgers trying to put in is it doesn't matter who we're playing. It doesn't matter what the game is. And you've seen that for the likes of Kuhn and Bernardo. I thought Bernardo was excellent.
I thought Bernardo was excellent as well. I think he's a player. And I think that if Rio Hatate doesn't watch himself, he might be finding himself getting put out the team for him, or Engels might get asked to play on the left-hand side and Bernardo brought in the right. I think that my mate made an interesting point. He was saying, do you think that because Kyogo and Maeda have been given the rest, that I think that if McCowan wasn't cup-tied with Dundee, he would have probably have started. It would have been a midfield three of Bernardo, McGregor and McCowan. And maybe Hatate's been a wee bit like, oh, I wish it, you know what I mean? And like that, I wanted to get the rest, but they couldn't do it because the guy's cup-tied.
And see, as Celtic fans, you're going, no, that's not acceptable. But see, at the end of the day, it's a human being. It's a human being, mate, exactly.
I think this gets missed. I think in a lot of the commentary, specifically for football fans and people that don't play football, was that these guys are not good enough. Like, these are the guys that are on the bench, and it's like, look, there's a difference between bringing a guy off the bench and like we're talking about, and contributing in a fluid, cohesive starting 11 than what it is making 8 changes, and that's to the outfield. So I feel like Rodgers sort of admitted it at the end of the game. It was kind of on him, that first half, because he made too many changes, and specifically changing the back four. Like, that's mental. Like, it's mental. Seemed I seen the lineup, I was like, oh, wow. And was actually getting a wee bit like, at half time, like, what are we going to do? But then, like we said, he rung the changes on the hour mark, and it just completely changed the game.
Well, that's the thing is, see the competitiveness of that midfield. Just what I was going to say is, I think that hopefully with the amount of options we have, that will drive Hatate to force him to step up more consistently, the way that we know that he can. But also, speaking about those changes, if I'm, what's the left back's name again? I keep forgetting.
Is it Villy?
Villy. If I'm a 20-year-old left back, make my debut at Celtic Park, probably the last guy I want in front of me to help me cover is Lewis Palmer. So I think there's that element as well. As I think he looks that much better if somebody like me does in front of him, covering that ground and help, because as well, you want somebody in front of you if you're that young making your debut, helping you a wee bit, directing you a wee bit, and you're not going to get that from Palmer. So there's a lot of things there about the team that are a bit disjointed. But one of the things that, just to finish on for Celtic, is I think in the past, that game might have petered out that 2-1 defeat, or maybe a 2-2, but the relentlessness to just go on and be like, no, we're not just going to win this, we're going to we're going to come through that sticky patch and still have a comfortable scoreline come the end of the game. I think just goes to show the mentality of the players and the squad overall. So
yeah, I agree. If it had been the same time last season, I don't think we would have been going through.
exactly,
And we won the second half 4-0. So you're just like, fair play.
you can't complain, but also winning the second half 4-0, but and then also being able to say learn for the first half about who works and who doesn't. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Palmer go in January for that, and it gives Rodgers an idea of where in the squad he wants to strengthen, so that if we lose Mida, we get a stronger option coming in than something like Palmer, or something, the left back knowing that the game is physical, those kind of things. So I think there's a lot of good things that can be learned from it, as well as getting through to the semi-final.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see who starts at the weekend.
I know he's got. It's a good problem to have though, and honestly, I couldn't even really predict it. But I think what has been clear is that when it comes to the big games, I think Ingles will be favoured. It's now clear the debate is Bernardo Hatate more than it now.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was really thinking about. And also, if you put if you bring in your second choice striker and he scores 2 goals, like how do you drop him? So it'll be interesting. And you know, as much as we were talking a lot and praising a lot, I felt like Kyogo should have been clinical, way more clinical in the Champions League. And if he'd have done that, we'd have probably been like 3-4-0 up at half time.
One of the misses in the first half was shocking.
So it'll be interesting to see if Adam Ida and Paulo Bernardo maintain their place in the team.
And actually, see the penalty that we got, I felt like Kyogo should have been cutting that back. He's got like, people don't talk about this, right? But he had a shot and it saved, and then Johnson gets the foul for the penalty. But if you go back and watch it, Kuhn's in the middle of the box completely free, and he shoots it right at the keeper. So I think it was almost like Kyogo was trying a bit too hard, but there was a couple of misses there where you're going, Ida buries that. And then for him to come on, one chance, one goal, as good as the goal was, you kind of go, he is giving Rodgers something to think about.
He definitely is, and barring an offside, they'd be 4 goals in 2 games, coming off the bench. Do you know what I mean? In 3 games, 4 goals in 3 games.
Exactly. So moving on to the other side of the city, because we spoke about Celtic a lot there, but they were back at Ibrox, which we sat here and said that will give them, you know, that kind of home advantage again, getting back at their home stadium. Expected them to beat Dundee pretty convincingly. What I can say is, obviously, it was a predictable scoreline. But I was, and I'm not trying to be, this has nothing to do with Celtic. I was a little bit surprised at the turnout at Ibrox in terms of the first game back. I thought it would be a bit more. I know it's a League Cup, I know it's a League Cup and it's not the most appealing thing, but I just thought because it hadn't been there for so long, I just figured there would be more of an itch for the fans to want to get back there.
I was the same. It felt. I maybe watched the first hour. Rangers looked all right. You know, like they look. You'd be splitting hairs if you're like, are they getting better? Maybe. You know what I mean? And they looked kind of again slow in the build up, and you know they were playing Dundee at home. It didn't feel like, I was surprised at a couple of things. One, the turnout and the lack of atmosphere, and then 2, like if Celtic had been locked out of Celtic Park for the first 2 months of the season, I'd be like, you would be wanting the players and the manager to be like, we need to go out and put in a performance, and it didn't really. It was kind of flat again. Positives coming for a couple of their new signings coming in and looking to be fairly decent, but I think as far as have they turned a corner and are they going to challenge Celtic on current evidence? I don't think so. And again, I don't see any of their starting 11 getting into the Celtic starting 11. So I think it's a strange place for Rangers. I think that there's maybe an element of their support starting to come to accept where they are. And there's nothing they can really do about it until January. And then in January, they're going to have the money to do anything about it anyway. But they're winning against everybody else. I think the big interesting games, they've already dropped points at Tynecastle. Hearts are absolute dog shit now, so that doesn't tell you anything.
But they've had 1 point for 18 and it was against Rangers.
It was against Rangers. Let's see how they do against Aberdeen when they come up against that. But it just felt a bit like the turnout was a bit crap. The performance was a wee bit flat. They won 3-0. It was all right. You know, they got a penalty and broke the deadlock with a penalty. But there was nothing like... There didn't seem like anything coming out of the other side of the city where they were like, that was a good performance and we're happy with that and we're looking to kick on now that we're back at Ibrox.
Yeah. I think the new signings do, you know, given time, they will make a bit of a difference creatively to the team. But I mean, it looks like he could be a good player, if I'm pronouncing his name right. And I think Jeffrey looks like he could be a really good upgrade on left back for them compared to how Barisic has been the past couple of years.
Yeah.
So there are things kind of, you know, at the end of the day, they're winning games and keep clean sheets, which is, the more you do that, the better. But I will say, as a bigger picture point, that turnout for me is an indication of the feeling around the club right now, the kind of apathy amongst the supporters. Almost this acknowledgement of we're not, you know, because I think in all the years going back to Division 3 when all these things went down, we won't get into that, but Rangers were always, love them or hate them, they always turned out and back, and they were selling out Ibrox in Division 3 and 2, and you know, you can say a lot about the club, but that's one thing you need to you could point at and say fair play to them for turning out and selling out 50,000 against Stirling Albion and all that kind of stuff. You know, there was always this feeling of we're Rangers and we're going to get back to being the premier club of Scotland, and there just felt like this kind of apathy and acknowledgement of this is where we're at and we don't want to go and watch this team that are going to be second best. Now, don't get me wrong, it was the League Cup and it was, you know, that it'll change, I'm sure, for the league games and stuff, but I do think that there is a lack of buzz around the team, and also you've got Camon coming out and just fumbling in the press. I mean, Colin using the word zombies was just such a poor choice of words. It was such a poor choice of words.
See, sometimes in life, right, you can't do right for wrong. And he's in that right now. Yeah. He's right
I
in there. I
almost feel like they should have someone else doing the pressers now. Like, because it's just not, it just seems like everything they say. Because it's coming out, because obviously one of the questions that I seen was, he was asked, like, you know, do you feel like, before the Cup, it was like, do you feel like there's a need for a positive performance to kind of galvanise the support and build some sort of positive momentum? And his answer was talking about how, you know, no, we're doing well, we're playing well, like there's, you know, things are good kind of thing. And I just think that I think Rangers fans, I'm not a Rangers fan, right, but I think if you were a Rangers fan, you'd appreciate a bit of honesty of him just going, yeah, we could, you know, it's good to be back at Ibrox and we want to give the fans something to be happy about and not try and pretend that everything's
like
rosy. Yeah.
Aye, like your current, like, yes, you're into the semi-final with the is it the Viaplay Cup or whatever it is it's called now? I don't even know. Premier.
They get a good draw as well, Motherwell.
Yeah, aye, because it could have been us or Aberdeen, the two informed teams in the country. But we're 6 games into the league season. You're 5 points behind not just Celtic, but Celtic and Aberdeen, and you get put out the Champions League. You've not had a good season so far. So a bit of realism into it. It's like that sort of, you need to be realistic, and when things aren't going well or when things aren't ideal, you need to just be able to just acknowledge that, you know.
Yeah.
And I feel like this might be the guy's problem, is that he's, you know, he lives in Delulu land and he's one of these guys that be positive, you know, like fucking David Brent in The Office or something. Do you know, it does sort of, he just puts his foot in it quite a lot, but there's a part of me kind of feels bad for him. You know, he's get the shit end of the stick at Rangers, and I think that I do kind of feel, I kind of see when he says stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, what? Like, please stop! Like, please be quiet.
Because I just think that, you know, you're standing Rangers fan and football fan, just you get to the point where they're no daft. They want you to be upfront about what's going on, and then if you're a Rangers fan looking at the wider picture, you're going, they had a CEO that left in May to go to Dubai or whatever it was, he went to Saudi Arabia, and they've just now appointed an interim change to that. We're now in September, and he left in May, and the guy's saying we want to hopefully before Christmas we'll put somebody else. And I just seen that on Twitter the other day, and I just thought, man, if you're a Rangers fan, you want to at least believe there's things going on behind the scenes to try and change what's happening here. And it just looks like everywhere they're almost, well, in some ways, they're the complete opposite of Celtic and how things have been run there. And I think that it's not just about this current team and this current season. There's an acceptance of, like there's no signs that anything off the pitch is going to change for the better unless somebody else comes in or something happens. But I think there's just no sign that any of this is going to change unless Celtic have a monumental collapse out of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. When your chairman's having to come out and reassure the fans that there is some sort of plan in place for the running of a club, like there is a business plan, you know that things aren't good, and again, like former chairman's coming out and being like, basically like, I'll take my job back, or like I'm ready and waiting.
Becoming this whole media thing with Dave King,
it's ridiculous, man. It's embarrassing, and it's almost as embarrassing as the Beale situation with Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, where he's in the Loudon and he's DMing Rangers players. It's an embarrassment. Like your club, mate. If I was Celtic, I'd be like so angry that type of unprofessionalism was going on, you know, at the club.
And I'm trying to, because I'm genuinely trying to speak up with this objectively. Like Rangers are a big football club, and they get a 50,000 seater stadium that gets sold out most weeks, and you just get, like, in terms of big clubs in Europe, the way they're run is just a total shambles, man. And like, you've got to wonder, something's got to give there. Something's got to have to change from the boardroom level.
I think we're looking at a potential takeover at some point. I think it's got to happen. If it doesn't, I've got a feeling that they'll just fade away into mid-table mediocrity in Scotland, which would not be good for us, really. I don't think. We want the rivalry. We want them. As much as people would be like, no, we don't. No, we do. We want the rivalry,
Yeah, because the thing is, you obviously take a bit of joy seeing them struggle, right? But the point is that if you're being objective about it, the situation they're in and the way they're being run is not good for Scottish football.
No.
And it's pretty evident that something's going to need to change for the better, for the good of the game, for the good of what's, the club and everything that's going on. Like, there just doesn't seem, if you get a chairman coming out and saying, we've got a plan, to me that means we've not got a plan.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Paradox, like the pure opposite of what they're saying.
And Rangers fans, they're not stupid. They're going to know, they're going to look at that and go, they're going to look at this guy and go, who is this guy? Did they pick him out the Loudons bar? Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of things going on there that are very questionable. But the team, there are elements of improvements, and we'll see how they progress as the season goes on. What do you think about how Rangers are doing? What kind of changes would you like to see? And also with Celtic as well. Just to touch on a little bit here, we had the first sacking of the season with Stephen NAISMITH. 8 straight defeats. Hearts bottom of the table, 1 point from 18. I don't think there's any real, argument you can make for keeping NAISMITH at this point. And right on time for Craig Levein just being sacked by St Johnstone. So there you go.
How many times has he been Hearts? Would this be the 4th time that he's been third or fourth?
I would put my house on him being the next Hearts manager.
Let's see if that plays out.
Craig Levein will be the next Hearts manager by the time we do another podcast. But I mean, for a club that finished third last season, there was even talk at the beginning of this season of, could they break the top two? Could they break into the top two? There was a genuine discussion happening amongst a lot of football fans. I don't know, maybe even Hearts fans, of, if we make the right signings here and we've got a good squad, could we push the likes of Rangers and break into that top two? But they have had a disaster of a start to the season, and their objective is now kind of changing into being trying to be top 6 still. But I think it goes to show that football clubs need to stop hiring managers based on being a player or being some sort of likeable character, because look at the difference between Aberdeen and Hearts. It's got to be down to the manager. It's purely down to the manager. I mean, this guy, I'm not being funny, but we talk about the way clubs are run. It's a bit embarrassing that Naismith didn't even have the qualifications to manage them in Europe. and I'm sorry, but see if you're Hearts Football Club, you're one of the biggest clubs in Scotland. You can't be hiring a guy that's not qualified to manage Europe.
I agree, and I feel like they just relied far too much on one player last season, and I think it papered over some cracks, that they had a striker that was just on fire for that period of time. And when you rely on one person like that, the wheels will always come off because form's temporary.
Yeah, because when you have a guy scoring 30 odd goals in one season, you're going to do well in this league, do you know what I mean? But also, on top of that, while that was happening, you had likes like Aberdeen and Hibs falling off a cliff in the bottom half of the table. So I think with Hibs and Aberdeen and Hibs doing much, looking like they're going to do better this season, plus the likes of St Mirren looking really formidable, and obviously coming out with Derek McInnes, and then Dundee United coming up, aren't a team that are going to be in a relegation battle either. So I think the league and the teams in the league are a lot stronger, and Hearts are getting found out for the fact that they were potentially third of a bad bunch last season. So there's a bit of a reality check there, and coinciding with the players just not performing and just couldn't get a win to save themselves. So hopefully whoever comes in can kind of turn them around and get... Because I mean, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of Hearts, they're not a team that I want to see get relegated out of the Premiership.
No, definitely not.
And I don't think they will. But I do think they would be in danger of it if they go for somebody like Craig Levein. And if we're being serious about it, take a leaf at Aberdeen, man. Look outside of Scotland. Get away from the last few matches they've had it all. As much as Hearts have done well the past few years, they've not really tried to get any better. They've not taken that step to go any further. They need to start looking elsewhere. Try and find, because I had no idea what this Aberdeen manager was before, right? And I'm saying if you do your due diligence, you do your research, there's got to be good managers out there that Hearts could get.
I think they've got to look at the Falkirk managers at John McGlynn.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? Based on the start of the season and the football that they're playing. So I would.
It'd be a much more progressive than going back. I mean, because I'm sitting here, I genuinely believe that they will.
I think it'll be Levein as well. So I think you're right.
And if you're a Hearts fan, you've got to be like, why are we doing this again with this guy? So there's a lot going on there. But I think again, another big club that are kind of needing a new sense of direction. Who do you think the next Hearts manager is going to be? We shall see. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. There's plenty more podcasts and such coming. Had a couple of kind of big guest books as well for the coming weeks and months, so looking forward to that. So stay tuned and thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and we'll be back with more content soon.